start with this one. We'll go kind of, what's that, 3 feet? Maybe 3
So
feet.
we're thinking square feet right now.
That
is
is
right?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
That's how you gauge it.
We'll just kind of, like we were doing earlier, you scrape it up.
Yeah, let's move the mulch out. Just outside of that area.
So this one we'll do, it's gonna be 2.5 by 2.5. So that's like basically like 5 square feet. Like close to between 5 and 10 square feet. So essentially, so if we're doing 10 square feet, basically want a fifth of a pound or 0.2 pounds of that guy.
Wow.
And so that's
very little.
Yeah, very little. And so that's going to be something like 200 grams. And then I'm just going to look at the density of this stuff. And so this says 8 ounces is like a half pound.
Okay.
Or well, 8 ounces is a half pound. And then I'm looking for basically the density of the product.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna do about 2 ounces of the sulfur.
Okay.
And so that's like 2 ounces, like in terms of volume, not necessarily weight. And so what I'm gonna do is,
we have a little shovel if you'd prefer it.
Yeah, that works. Perfect. And so, yeah, in the future, you can, at your shop or whatever, you can kind of measure out how much like, 2 ounces is going to be, and it can be more streamlined. But for now, I'm just kind of going to eyeball two, like they have these like ounce marks here.
Yeah.
And so I want basically 50 mils or 2 ounces.
Sure.
In terms of volume. And so I'm just going to do that. It's good that we've kind of like moved all this dirt out, and we're going to try to definitely get into the
below the organic later.
Yeah. And so
I'm
actually going to like maybe dig it out just a little bit more.
Wow.
Making sure that like I get this fertilizer where it's going to be in contact with that emitter zone. Now, when you're doing this, like it's not, if you don't get it below the emitter zone, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Sure. Because once you add this fertilizer, there's like the way that the soil works is once this water's coming out, it's not just staying right here, because this is like a clay soil. It's going to like spread out like that, like there is a capillary action to soil.
Okay.
So no matter what, even if you get some of the fertilizer away from the emitter zone, because you've added a mulch and the moisture spreads throughout this whole planting area, it will come in contact with the fertilizer and break it down, So I'm being really, really careful right now.
Yeah, no, do it the best way for us now, which is great. And we can just adapt it. But yeah, it's good to know.
Make sure I don't put a geyser in one of your emitters.
Yeah.
And so I'm just gonna kind of just sprinkle it around, and again, you don't have to be really as careful as I am being right now.
Sure.
But
yeah.
And if you do this, it seems like a really small amount, right?
Right.
But if you do this twice a year, in the next year, the soil pH should change in like a very favorable way,
Got it.
And then as we've discussed, if you just stay on top of it, eventually you'll see the effects with the plant,
Wow.
And so we're going to do the same thing with that one too.
Pass that one over. Well, this one is being used because it's low What did you say? It was a lower pH, so we're raising it?
The opposite. So it's a little bit of a higher
It's a
pH
high
than what you'd
pH.
want.
So we're using this because the pH is high. So this
Yeah.
isn't necessarily a fertilizer, it's just correcting the
Yeah.
pH levels.
Yeah, it's an amendment is how I would describe it.
Amendment.
Like kind of amending or changing the soil.
So typically we just use that one. But for this property here, it's a little
for plants like this, like this is more of like a Mediterranean type
salvia.
Yeah, it's an acid loving plant, so it does want like a lower pH.
Okay.
So I was conservative with my like addition of the sulfur, but if you added more, it like wouldn't be that big of a deal. And I actually may end up adding a little bit more.
Okay.
But kind of the same thing, you know, you just want to sprinkle it around. Is it when y'all are adding fertilizers like for a larger area, do you have like a spreader
Yeah.
you use?
Yeah.
So one thing you can do with the spreader, because if you're just kind of going over a lawn, you don't know exactly how much is being spread or like the rate of the spreading, and also it depends on how fast you're walking and how fast you're churning it. So what you can do is you can go to like an asphalt area that's like the same size.
Wow.
Take a sample amount and like do that spreading, and then sweep it all up and weigh it and see how much you actually added.
Wow.
Stuff like that can like really like, you know, help you in terms of,
sure,
you know, making sure you've added the correct
quantity.
amount.
Yeah.
So I have a question. You say when the pH is too high,
yep.
So we had to use a different kind of the fertilizer, or doesn't matter?
This one is to correct pH.
Yeah, so the sulfur is to lower the pH. And you'll find that in most of the places you go, the pH is going to always be a little bit too high. That's just kind of how soil usually works. 8, 9 is way too high. So then if this was 8 or 9, I would be adding like probably that much more. So yeah.
So so we got to figure out if the pHs are
what level.
Yeah, because if it isn't sulfur, it could be lime we need. If it's the opposite.
Yeah. And a lot of people, especially old school gardeners, will just kind of every year they'll just like, they assume like they just always done it, so they'll just always throw down lime or gypsum or something like that, and they think that's fine. But you don't know, like people over lime way too much.
I see.
That because I don't know why. I think it's just like an old school thought you just need to add lime to your soil all the time. But you really rarely do, unless there's like it's just for some reason the soil is super low in pH.
Got it.
Most plants do not like a pH above 7.
Yeah.
Strawberries are an exception. They like up to like 7.2 or something like that. But yeah, most plants are acid to neutral loving plants. So then you've done this, and this is kind of like where you like would want to be for you guys. You're doing this to make the place look good, right? So you want to like kind of like as best you can get like the soil part down,
the dirt first.
And then, I mean, y'all know this, but then you kind of add the mulch and whatnot. And yeah, and then, you know, you do your best, but did y'all add compost when you planted this too?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where, like, if you're doing that kind of an install, that's where that backfill thing that I talked about would come in handy. So like if you're digging this out and you have a hole that's maybe like a foot by foot by foot, then I can tell you exactly how much compost and fertilizer mixed together
makes it
to add back in.